Welcome to Big Blend Radio Success Express Show, where we talk about business, leadership, and career development. Hey, everybody, you know we love our Success Insider conversations, and one of our favorite things in the world, as you know, besides books and music and plants and animals, is wine. Who can live without it? We can't. And so we're going to have another winemaker conversation today with Dave Specter. Dave and his wife, Sara, own and run Bells Up Winery. They're based up in Oregon near Portland. Their wine is phenomenal. And so we thought, hey, you know what? It's time to do another Success Insider because, Dave, you kind of threw away one career for another. And that's a big leap because, number one, wineries are not cheap. You've got big overhead. You moved. And then you're doing a whole new career. Like this is a little crazy, but it's super cool. So welcome back. How are you?
I'm great, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, you're right. You know, as we always say, you have to be a little more than crazy to do what we do. And I think we just sort of decided we hit a point in our lives where, you know what, if you're going to make some changes, why don't you make all the changes and just kind of deal with them all at once?
Well, I think we deserve to be happy in life, and we should be doing what makes us happy. And, you know, we may not all become, super millionaires, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can, that's cool, but it's about being happy because that's it. That's what it's about. It's not just the almighty dollar, though we need to be sustainable and all that good stuff, right?
Sure,
In business and in
absolutely.
life. We want to have a roof over our heads. We need to be able to go for vacation, but do we care about, having our own private jet? No.
No, you have to pay your bills, like you said. I mean, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I think, part of what we learn in life as we kind of move down the road for each of us is learn how we individually are wired. What are the things that are important to us? What are the things that we need? And not things necessarily that society wants to try to convince us that we need. More is not better. I mean, obviously, we live in a country where just historically we're always taught consume, 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 more, more, more. When you're in a job, how high can you rise? It's instead of asking the question, what is it that is actually going to make me happy in the short term and the long term? How can I be the best parent and husband and citizen, and just how do we strike that balance? And that balance will be different for each person. Before I got into wine, I was a tax lawyer for 10 years. I spent
Dude, that's nuts. Okay. Like there's crazy and then that's nuts.
or insane, borderline insane. But it was the kind
Okay.
of thing where I was, I never asked myself when I started doing it, was this something that I was actually going to enjoy, or was it something that I was just good at? So I just kind of kept at it. And I'm from a time where, now as we sit in 2024, we're now kind of more used to having the conversations of, is what we do for a career meeting the balance of what we need just personally, individually. Back in those days, we were just beginning to have that conversation. I talk to my father all the time, and one of the things that we talk about is, in his generation, you didn't have those conversations. But at the same time, in his generation, you could leave the office at the end of the day, close your door, and not have to take everything home with you. And as time and technology and the demands of our lives kicked in, if your listeners remember when BlackBerries were far more used than they are today, I mean, I was almost tethered to one of those things, and in fact ended up needing a thumb operation because I used the thing so darn often. And when I was back when I was an attorney, what you see is that there are some people that is built into their DNA and they love doing it. Whereas for me, I mean, I was good enough at it to where I could, continue to advance in my career, but I was over time just less and less happy doing what I was doing, and really found that what was important to me was to create something that was tangible, something that would really make a difference in the lives of other people. And there are a lot of
yes, and
things.
wine surely does.
Oh, absolutely. And there are a lot of ways to
Yes.
do that. And in our case, we took something that we were very passionate about in wine and just found a way to be able to share, our love of it with others, and at the same time be able to craft great wines and, just really make our a nice life for us that way.
And it's challenging. I think that's also part of it. It can't be just be, oh, I love wine, so I'm going to make wine. It's about you have to be ready for the ultimate challenge, really, because it's challenging to even own a business, right? They always give you, oh, you've got your 2 years, but it's challenging to also work with nature and then also deal with the people side of it and the business part of it and the distribution of it. So it's a challenge. And don't you think that sometimes we swear at challenges, right? We're all going to have our words at moments. Anybody running a business, if you don't have a moment of when you just want to kick the door or something, then you're not really in it.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. And with the wine industry in particular, there is definitely a romanticized version of what our industry is. Now, just to say at the beginning, I absolutely love what I do, or I wouldn't be doing it. Number one, first and foremost. However, I think a lot of people believe that those of us in the wine business, are all independently wealthy and sort of sit around with our pinkies extended and just sort of taste through barrels and sip wine all day. And maybe that happens at the corporate level, but when you're a small producer like we are, and we call ourselves micro boutique because I only make about 600-700 cases per year. We're too
Wow.
small to even be boutique. We have no employees. I make the wine, I drive the tractor, I do the sales. My lovely wife, Sara, does marketing and schedules appointments and sort of utility infielder for other things, but that's it. So we work our tails off, and it starts in the vineyard with farming. We do have a crew that we contract with that helps us with the hand labor, but I'm responsible for running the crew. I'm responsible for the tractor work. We can't make great wine without busting our tails out in the summer heat or in the rain, or just sort of whatever nature throws at us. And then once we get to harvest, now it's the kind of the end of job one and the beginning of job two, where now we have to take all of that fruit, go through the processes, and do a lot of very fine point detail work. I think a lot of people think wine makes itself, but the reality is, for what we do, even on a very, very small scale, it involves a lot of just physical work. And every year, I'm about to turn 51. And the reality is every year you can kind of feel few more aches and pains than you can the year before. So
Mm-hmm.
it is always, having said all of that, we wouldn't want to have it any other way, because the benefits of what we get from it are, being a small place, we get to establish wonderful relationships with our customer base. I think in the wine business, you're only going to succeed if you're either really, really big and you go through distribution and you sort of show up in every
Mm-hmm.
supermarket and every restaurant, or you're really, really small. And that's the path that we wanted to take. And when we talk to our customers, it's the sort of relationship that we get to build, and the joy that you get to see in their eyes when they come to visit and they try the new wines, or they take our wines home and then they send us pictures of sharing the wines with family and friends, whether it's sitting at dinner or, just out by the campfire or whatever, just those little everyday moments. And the payoff for us becomes, that knowing that your efforts, everything you worked, were a small little part of that moment of joy for the people that you've connected with. So, you have to be in this business for the right reasons. It's, as you said, it's not not the way to fame and
Mm-hmm.
fortune. But that's not why we did it. We did it because we're passionate about the product. It's just one of the very few things I know of that, just when you put something like that in front of a group of people, it just brings them together.
I
It's just hard to be
agree.
mad when you're drinking a good bottle of wine.
Well, and it's that conversation about it. And, it's like I had a friend once, and him and his girlfriend at the time, we were having dinner and we were getting to this point of like, let's just sit down. She had made something. I remember it was couscous. I actually remember the whole meal. It's like a whole new recipe she had made with couscous and artichoke hearts. And I'm like, actually, I haven't had artichoke hearts and done this way and all this. I didn't know, I came from the bush in Africa. We didn't do that, but we did. We could grow them. But we were having this conversation about understanding where your food comes from, understanding, thinking about while we're eating. We're like, I wonder where this came from. Who made the couscous? Who grew the artichokes? And who had the wine? And so it was like, let's read the label. Let's find out who they are. And you've got to think this was also pre-Google. So
Mhm.
now we're able to have all these apps and everything that tells us everything, but back then we didn't. And it was kind of this reflective time, and we were like, let's all make this concerted effort. I think we were all in our 20s at this time, and also completely naughty 20s, but we were growing up at this point and going, let's make this concerted effort amongst us all to think about who is making all of this, who's behind it, and you should learn about the agricultural movements in our world and the people who grow, who you're out there, like you're saying, no matter what the weather is at, they've got to go out there and deal with it, right? And it's like the history of agriculture is fascinating because it's the history of humans, right?
Oh,
That
absolutely. And that all plays into its own stories. We're now at a point in with our winery that we now almost everything that we make comes with fruit that we grow on our estate vineyard. That was not always the case because when we bought our place back in 2012, there were no vines there. So back in the very early days, we had to buy all of the fruit that we used to produce our wines. And that
mm,
people understood that they were looking forward to the estate vineyard coming online down the road. But in those days we really focused on working with vineyards that were very much like us, small
okay.
vineyards, people that lived on the property and at a minimum drove their own tractors.
Mm,
And I wanted to do that for two reasons. One was I wanted to know that the people that were doing the farming actually had a personal interest in the quality of the grapes coming off their property. And when you have large corporate managed vineyards, it's really hit or miss. And
mm,
frankly, you don't really get a chance to establish partnerships with growers that are very, very large. But when you're small and you're taking, and I may be buying, in those days, let's say, maybe half of the
mhm,
yields coming off of that vineyard, you really had an opportunity to work directly with that grower to strategize, to talk about, what should we be doing out here that's going to do nothing but increase the quality of the fruit that comes off of the vines so that we can ultimately share with our customers.
mm,
The other thing reason I wanted to do it was because I wanted to share those individual growers' stories with the customers when they were here.
mhm.
So much about wine is the stories, and and practically every step of the process is a story in and amongst itself, whether it's the weather that's involved, whether it's, what we went through, the broken down tractors and all the things, all the things we had to overcome, but it's as with any farming, it's just how do you overcome the obstacles put in front of you to get something that is going to make a lot of people very, very happy in the end. So,
Well, I've
those
heard it's
two.
always relationships in the wine world and agriculture is you cannot run a farm and be successful on your own. You need to be friends with your so-called competition to help each other out and to even make a region become known. I know you're in Oregon, everybody knows Pinot Noir, but you do more than Pinot, right? So,
We do. We do.
yeah, you had to diversify, do something different, but those relationships that you're talking about, hey, oh my gosh, it's harvest time. And suddenly the tractor said, I'm not working anymore. Who's
Mhm.
got a tractor? Everybody gets on the phone, right? And starts helping each other. And isn't that like you're talking about those relationships? You want relationships with your customers who are drinking the wine, but it goes further and beyond. I don't think the wine industry in this country would have made it to what it is today nationally if it wasn't for relationships and people helping each other.
I agree with that. From my understanding, I know our region, of course, very, very well, but from what I hear, there are some areas that are far more commercialized than what we have
Sure.
here in Oregon. there it tends to be not quite as mutually beneficial. And you know, I guess that's just kind of the nature of corporate anything these days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But for us, there, you know, there are stories, you know, when you come into this area and you go around to different wineries, especially the smaller ones, you will hear stories upon stories of situations where, it was, let's say it was a husband and wife team that came in, and a couple of months before harvest, one of the spouse passed away unexpectedly.
Ooh,
And now you're staring down harvest, and you know it's coming whether you're ready or not. How many other wineries stepped up to say, hey, we'll make your wine this year, you know, we'll provide barrels, we'll provide space, you know, whatever it is you need. It's really been the way that the Oregon wine industry has developed as a region.
that's
You know, we
amazing.
have nowadays we have 800 wineries in the valley, and that is a heck of a lot. But it also means that there's a great support network out there for people that, you know, hey, we all at some point are going to run into situations where we need the graces of others to help us along. And knowing that you can count on that somewhere here in the valley is so important.
So the corporate side of things, when we look at this, if small businesses unite in their field, yes, there's competitiveness, and that's important. It's healthy, right? When it's done in a
Sure.
healthy form. But it's those relationships that actually build an actual industry correctly, have better standards and things like that. And by the way, I love, for those watching, don't you think I'm a chameleon with this color blue popping in and out? I don't know what's going on, but see, it just did it. But you're doing it on two sides, which I think is really fantastic. You're doing it with the relationship with your customers and the relationship with those that you work with, your vendors, your growers, everyone. But I mean, just now we just stopped the recording real quick because you had someone show up and want to have the experience. And so you're building the experience, and it's not just the wine, it's the experience of being there, the conversation, learning from each other. So that's, are you seeing people actually? I think I saw a post on one of your social media posts, seeing people as they learn by sitting down with you as a winemaker. Are they finding different likes in wine? Are they changing their palate by this kind of informative yet fun adventure?
I'm not sure so much that it's changing their palates. I think it's discovering that a lot of the
Okay,
assumptions
yeah,
that
good
they have
word.
been making about their palates
Mhm.
aren't necessarily true. I do see this all the time where, you know, because a lot of people, you know, you may come to a winery, but you've bought a whole bunch of wine just in a retail setting. So you come in with expectations about, let's say, what a white wine should, or no, is quote supposed to be, right?
Mhm.
You know, and we have our own style, and it's very distinctive, and very, it's one of the things that sets us apart. And just to kind of give you an example, a lot of people think that white wine is either oaky, buttery California Chardonnay,
Mhm.
or sharp, acidic, just ripping, just very crisp, or something that is sweet, sugary sweet. And what I show is that you don't really need to be any of those things. You can create a fruity wine that has acidity, but it is still gentle and soft
Mhm.
on the palate. So, you know, challenging those assumptions really opens the door. What I tend to find is that people that are red wine drinkers end up really liking my whites,
Mhm. I loved
because
your whites.
this
I'm
is
picky about white wine, and
yeah,
your
it's like
whites are
this is
good.
way different than what I was expecting. And I see the reverse too. My reds tend to be softer, more elegant. So when I get white wine drinkers that say, "Oh, you know, reds are too big for me. They just make me feel overly dry." Well, if you've been buying big, heavy Cabernets or big red blends, yeah, you would probably would feel that way. But then you see that when you're doing things small and crafted, you know, you start to realize that the world of wine is just much bigger than I think folks expect it to be. And so
Mm.
you do get all those pleasant surprises. I can't tell you how many people that I've gotten in here. We make a Syrah. We make a very soft Syrah. It's very Pinot-ish in its feel. And how many people before I pour that wine for and say, "Oh, I don't like Syrah. I don't like Syrah," and it's like, trust me. Trust me.
Don't
And then
do
they
that to
taste
me.
it and they look at me and their eyes are really big. And it's just that moment of discovery that they have to say, wow, I didn't think that a wine like this could be produced in that way. And so those are the moments I think that we really get to show folks that, you don't need to be some ultra sophisticated wine person to enjoy wine experiences. We see this all the time. How many folks will come in and say, yeah, I don't know all the sophisticated terms. And I say, you not only do you not need to know the sophisticated terms, it's probably better that you don't, because you're
Right.
going to be able to actually enjoy the wine the way it was intended to be enjoyed much better that way.
Right. That's something I talked about with a distillery recently, Casey Jones Distillery out of Tennessee.
Mhm.
And their history is like crazy fascinating, right? And I talked to him about the distillery started doing, it's interesting, breweries have taken off, right? And distilleries, you didn't see that many people go distillery hopping, right?
Right,
Now that's starting to happen, like in Kentucky, obviously, and Tennessee.
right.
But I was talking to him, I said, I think the brewery industry disrupted the wine industry, because the wine industry at a certain era, I felt like you had to wear high heel shoes and get dressed up to go. It's like going to a play, like you're going to go to the Met or something, or you're not going just to your local theater. You are going, it was so almost highfalutin, it was unapproachable, would be the
Right,
word.
right.
And I think now we've got a different era of winemakers, and you're definitely in there, where it's like, let's go have some fun. I don't know about that wine, but let's go taste it. Let's go learn and let's have an experience. And that's what travelers want. Travelers, no matter what age group they're from, want to have an authentic experience that makes some kind of positive change in their life, period. That I
A-
don't care who it is. And so I
Absolutely.
think you fit that, perfectly.
Absolutely, and it's so funny because you're right. Wine for many years and here's the important thing, in this country, got this reputation that you needed to be highbrow in order to enjoy it. Yet when you go to the birthplaces of fine wines over in France and Italy and Spain, what you see is wine is not a production. It is an everyday part of their lives. And the experiences that we always enjoyed the most were going into the little villages, get out of the cities, go into the villages where these wines are produced. And what you're getting is just the local village table wine. You get a carafe, there's no label, you get a few euros, and your hardest decision is white or red, right? And the wines are without pomp and circumstance or fanfare, and they are some of the best wines you will ever have, because they're made in small quantities. They're low. They're never intended. I shouldn't say never, but they're rarely intended to leave the village that they're produced in. And you just get a couple glasses, and you don't get the fancy wine glasses. You're getting little juice glasses, and you're just sharing all of this, and you're not psychoanalyzing the wines that we in this country are taught to do all the time. It's just
Oh, you're so
enjoyment,
right.
and it's
Oh,
everybody that gets involved in it, right? And that's the sort of feeling that we want folks to have, and it just all gets back to this idea of connections and connectability. I want to have real everyday human beings as my customers. I mean, we talk about it all the
you're not
time.
going to care if I wear high heel shoes, because I can't do that anymore. I'm too much of a hiker in the woods. So, like, I'll fall down at the winery, and you don't want that, because we can't
Oh,
blame
it's
the
it's
wine on
whatever
that.
floats your boat as far as I'm concerned, but
Yeah. So,
certainly for us, it is come as you are, and
yeah,
it's better
really.
that way.
Yeah.
Because when do we normally drink wine in this country? Just when do we consume it? We're at work, we come home, we're tired. We don't want to have some, deep, thought experiment
We
in
want
order
to
to
be
figure
able to
out.
put the wine glass in the dishwasher
Yep. And I want to be able to pop the cork on something and just be able to
and be
exhale.
barefoot.
Well, exactly. So, that's
Yeah.
when people are here, it really shouldn't be any different, right? I mean, this should be,
Yeah.
well, okay, maybe you need to wear shoes, but whatever
Yes,
shoes
you
you
do.
wear are,
Yeah.
but whatever shoes you wear are going to be perfectly fine. I
I
mean, God
promise to wear
knows.
shoes
Yeah,
when
I
we
mean,
come
God,
see you.
this is about as nice as I dress, right? I
Yeah.
get my button down and my polo, and that's all we really need.
Oh, but Dave, you aren't having a shirt that changes colors as we talk. So
I know. I
that
need
you
to get
need
me one
to,
of
we
those.
need to step up. Well, listen, this is important because there's this relationship you're building with your customers. They're sitting down, drinking wine, changing their minds, discovering, not changing, but discovering, like you're saying, ooh, something new. The discovery aspect to me is very crucial in life because that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be learning new things, having epiphanies and discoveries, and ooh, look at this. How exciting. We're supposed to enjoy life. So that's why being in the right career that suits you is, and you can have multiple careers and enjoy all of them just as equal, right? Because we're
Absolutely.
allowed to. That's why we're the blend,
Mhm.
but because we like all these different things and we can't say, oh, we only talk about wine. Oh, we only talk about music. You like music and wine together, right? We'll talk about that. But it is an art form. The culinary arts, winemaking, you keep saying the word crafting. You're crafting, it's small batch, it's caring. So it's a piece of art. Each bottle is a piece of art and it's temporary art, which makes it even more special. And to me, it's heartbreaking too, because like you like a certain wine, you better savor that taste. It's about slowing down to enjoy that art. And you're allowed to go, I don't like this art. It doesn't work for me. But it gave you a reaction, and art is supposed to give you a reaction. You think about it, you can create an opinion. We're allowed to be opinionated. This whole thing of no judgment and no opinions, nah, that's not true. We're allowed to create and have an opinion about what our tastes are, and then we can change it all up the next day or the next sip. We can. It's
Completely agree.
art.
I think the key always is, when you, and this is true, I think, of any art form, when you taste a wine that doesn't hit your palate the right way, or when you go to a museum and you see a piece of art there and it's just not jiving with you. I've always said that the key is, can you still respect what
Yes.
was done to put into it?
Yes.
I make 10 different wines for people that come in, and not
Wow.
every one of those wines is gonna hit everybody the same way. That's life. But my intention is, can people walk out and say that whatever their favorites were, that they could tell that every one of the individual wines was really well made, and that they respected and appreciated and admired the process and all that went into it. As a producer, this is really the best we can do, because then it's up to every individual's preferences. And you just sort of see how that translates across the wines that you produce. But if you've done your job and just kind of left it up to, hey, we're just going to put this out into the world, and we're going to get a lot of people that it's going to be their jam, and we're going to get some people that's not going to be their jam, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know people click me off. They're like, you said that word too many times. I'm clicking you off. And that's okay too. But here's the thing, it is about when the more experiences we have, it's a different layer to our lives. And I think wine and the experience you guys have created is a way that more people should look at doing just as part of it's a holistic approach to creating wine and sharing it, and that builds relationships with which changes everything. That's like a secret ingredient is the relationship part, I think, with what you're doing. So what's it feel like with these award things, like it's award-winning wine, an award-winning book, award-winning song? Like I have a love-hate relationship with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a love-hate relationship with the Grammys. Why can't blues be televised at the same time as pop? I'm sorry, I think it's just as important, if not more. Oopsie.
Yeah,
So that's just my opinion.
sure.
But with what you're doing with awards, winemakers go in, submit their wines, and then if you win the award, it's really amazing, right? Whether it's bronze, silver, gold, all those different point systems and all of that. But it's like you're competing against another grower. Maybe their grapes did this that year. Like, what does it feel like to do that? And do you even want to?
So I'm in somewhat of a unique position on this, being as small as I am, because what I find is that the competitions that you're talking about, where they matter the most is ultimately providing marketing opportunities for wineries that sell through distribution. So sell in
Okay.
stores and supermarkets and restaurants and those kind of things. For your viewers that have, we all know what it's like. You walk into a wine shop or a grocery store and we look at a wall and there are thousands of bottles sitting up there that look exactly alike. And oh my Lord, how am I supposed to pick the wine that is going to be the best for me? And one of the little ways that producers do that is you'll see what we call shelf tags, that little piece of paper that's taped right underneath the one bottle that has either the award information or a score in the 90s or something like that. Just some way to make that bottle stand out from the thousands that are around it. And there are a lot of people who make buying decisions based on, hey, did this wine, was this wine well rated? I've always kind of found those to be unhelpful because, who is the one that is doing the judging on the wines to provide the rating? And are their standards similar to what you enjoy? There are publications that have inherent biases, and I'm not saying that those are either good or bad, but the biases exist. And if your preference in your wines don't match those biases, then their scores are going to be completely meaningless for you.
Hmm.
Now, I am
Yeah.
lucky because I don't sell through distribution. The only thing that matters is when people are here, are they enjoying the wines? Are they to each individual's tastes? While awards I'm sure, would be nice for stroking your ego, they don't really benefit me on the sales side. I mean, I suppose they might provide a little bit of social media marketing, but it's unlikely that look, if and I say this all the time, if I won every competition I ever entered and my customers didn't like the wines, they wouldn't buy the wines. I mean,
Right.
it is far more important what their opinions are than the opinions of just a random panel or
That's a
writer.
life lesson though. Isn't that the truth? Because it's like, oh, they bought their way into that award, or you know what I mean? That's where, they used to say about women, oh, she slept her way up to the top. You know, that whole kind of, it's not authentic, right?
Right.
And that
Exactly.
that authenticity comes from what your customer's going to tell the truth, or you're not going to see the money come in, right? And it's like
Yeah.
they're either going to say something, and we do have some loudmouths on social media, unfortunately. So can we do it on the positive? you know but listen, can we tell the Grammys to put the blues up front? I know you want classical up there more, right? And that
Uh,
gets knocked out. Come
I
on.
get it. It's
Yeah.
the other thing too. I realize is that, and I think bluegrass is more mainstream than classical is these days. But we understand that what we do is niche. We are not everybody that is out there will value the experience we provide. We completely understand that. The benefit though of being our size is I don't need to make everybody happy. I just need
Yeah,
to make
that's too
the
hard.
right people
Yeah.
happy over and
Well,
over again.
I want to go back to this point system because I know I'm terrible. I look at labels. I do. I like you. Yeah, I like your labels. I mean, it's got music attached.
No.
I like the word bells up. It's already like telling me it's cool. But I read the profile, right? And we had to go, it was earlier this year. We were going somewhere, as we travel and pet sit and do all kinds of that kind of thing. And where we were going, they're like, oh, come over for dinner. We're going to have this, this, this. And she told me what we were going to eat because we have shellfish allergies and all kinds of stuff. So she told me, is this going to be fine? I'm like, oh, yeah. So I knew what we were going to have. And on the way, I stopped at the store. I said, do you mind if I bring wine? Because I hate to bring wine and find out like you can't do that, you know. So I read the wine, I read the profile, read where it came from, where it was, sourced, Russian River, I think. As I recall, it was red wines. And I didn't go like, here's a Mourvedre because that might be too heavy. Did this middle of the road kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
But read the profile. Would it go with the meal? It did. Got 2 bottles of wine. We get there. Her and Nancy are finishing up a bottle of wine that she had purchased. So I brought the wines out. You know what she did? And I can say this because I don't didn't enjoy the dinner as much. She had the audacity, or number one, I said, well, do you want to taste them? And she's like, no, no, before we taste, we do this. She read the wine on an app
Gosh.
and went, and I looked at her like, this is rude. Number one, to me,
Yeah.
someone's bringing something to your table, you open it up and you taste it. And if you don't like it, you just go spit it in your bathroom or whatever.
Right.
But she looked this up, and I remember going, and Nancy and I are looking at each other going, well, this is odd. Like, I know that we're in a new era now and people are appified. And I thought, and she turned to me and she goes, oh my gosh, your wine's higher rated in the night. It was like whatever. And I got it on sale. And I'm like, so what? And she goes, it's rated higher than ours. I said, well, have you tasted it? Why don't we do the taste?
Right.
Then she tastes it. She goes, oh, it's so much better. And I'm like, why did you have to look it up to see how you would appreciate it instead of just tasting it? I don't understand. Like, I read the profile. Does it match the food? Does it, is it, whereas I'm not trying to be rude or take this negative, but I do feel that we're rating things according to things instead, like apps and stuff, instead of just try it, have fun, take that dirt road to the left if you don't know where it is. You don't have to always look at the map. Come on, let's have some fun. I want that fun back.
Totally.
So I think you're
Totally.
doing that.
And the thing about the reviews is, I think kind of like any review system that we have these days, you really have to dig into the individual reviews and just kind of get a sense of the profile of the person doing the reviews. And, again, it gets back to the question of, okay, well, that person may not have liked the wine, but does that person's tastes match up with yours? And it's nearly impossible to sort of figure that out. Then you talk about the bottle itself. Well, okay, with the labels, it's very difficult because you're only going to get told the story on the label that the winery wants to tell you. Right.
Mm.
So you're trying to make this decision based on their marketing department. And they may write it in such a way that it's not quite clear what's going on. One of the things that pieces of advice that I always give folks that are sort of breaking into enjoying wine is don't go to the large big box places. Go to a small independently owned wine store because the
Mm.
people that own that store curated all the bottles that they sell. They know the characteristics of every wine in that shop. And if you go and if you can develop a relationship with those people to say, hey, here's, taking your example, hey, here's what we're having for dinner. What would be a good match with, with this, the kind of give it the general thoughts of the wines that I'm thinking about. What would be a good match for that? And inevitably, you will find that going down that road is going to make you so much happier in the long term because you're going to be talking and learning from a position of strength from people that have actually tasted the wine, right? And so you
Mm.
can make decisions based on people that have actual experience with the product.
Are we
Well,
back to relationships again? We
yeah,
are.
because when folks are here, it's the same idea, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what other people think. It may matter as to whether, you make a decision to go to a certain winery in the first place. I suppose if you see enough negative reviews, that could be something. But at the same time, if it's just a matter of personal preference,
Mm.
try it, enjoy it, see what is out there. And as we always see, people are surprised
Mm.
inevitably by what they discover about, themselves and about the world of wine. It's just much broader than a lot of people suspect it is.
Now, for you, just going in, all right, I'm going to make this life change of a career and purchase property. And I mean, this is a whole big deal. Then having to brainstorm and come up with, okay, this is how we're going to work with our clientele. We're going to have them make appointments, come in, have this experience. You make these choices and then you have to run with it. Sometimes we all know as in anything in life, and not everything goes as smooth as we want, but most times it will if you dedicate to it. How has it been for you making that decision, even with your family? Because it changes everything for a family when one person goes, hey, I'm going to do this instead. So you kind of all have to be on board and understand like there's sacrifices and commitments, right? That go hand in hand.
There are, and those sacrifices have happened in a couple of ways. My lovely wife, as she always likes to say, she still has a full-time job. She is a freelance marketer, and her business is very successful to the point where, particularly in the earliest years of the winery, could really help support the family while the winery was getting to the point where it could, at the very least, pay its own way. We're at a point with the winery where it can't cover all of the household expenses, but it can absolutely pitch in where needed. But to get to that point, Sara needed to be able to step up and help, and God love her for doing that. It also is a lifestyle issue. When we tend to take appointments, and they do happen, of course, during the week, but most of them are going to be on weekends. In the times when I think folks normally think, oh, hey, this is our time to rest and chill. Well, for us, that's when we're going to be, and more so me here, but doing tasting appointments. So you're gonna give that up, and make that the trade-off that you make is that you get to live in an amazing place. You get to do something you're really passionate about. You get to meet a lot of people that really share that passion that we have. I mean, being our size and being by appointment, it does self-select in a lot of ways. Our ideal customers are people that love wine, but are not snobby about it. And it's not a matter of life and death. People that, as we've been talking about, want to have the new experiences, that want to broaden their horizons and want to just sit down and have a glass or two with a friend. And so, we get to do that in a lot of ways too. The winery becomes our social life in that way, because a lot of times the customers that we get, because we get to, be directly with them the whole time, they become friends.
That's awesome. See, I love that. That's like for us too, the way our world works. And it's like, when half of our friends are bed and breakfast owners. It's the same thing. They're working their butts off. Everyone's checking in at 3 o'clock or midnight or something, but it's this relationship you build. And I think this is the biggest lesson that you've shared today is it's all comes down to relationships, whether it's your customers coming in, relationship dynamic within your family, relationship with your vendors. So it's all about cultivating that. Did you think that's how it was going to be when you first said, I'm going to go into wine because I like wine? Like even making that decision and then going, I'm really going to do it. And then it starts to happen. That's got to be wild.
I think that a lot of times, a lot of the decisions that you make lead to some natural consequences. If you decide, as we did, that you're going to be a small winery, there are going to be some realities about how you're going to have to operate as a result of that. Because we knew that we were entering an area that is known for really high quality wines almost across the board. So, it's the idea that you're going to come in and set up shop and say, well, my wines are great. Well, yeah, but your neighbor's wines are probably great too, and their neighbor's wines are great too. So what are going to be the things that you will do to set your business apart? Well, if you're going to be a tiny micro producer the way we are, well, okay, what are the things that we can do to maximize our size and leverage that? Well, we're not going to throw the biggest, most lavish parties. We're not going to have a building that looks like the Taj Mahal. We're not going to be, we're not going to give you song and dance and all that stuff. But what we're going to give you is great company, a great explanation of what went into the craft of each individual wine. And it really starts there, but it doesn't end there, because, once you've sort of done that, I always say that when I meet a group for the first time, it's like going on a first date, right? Like you're telling your background stories and, you're telling a lot of stories, but once you've established that relationship and people come back, we tend to find that we spend almost no time talking about the wines, because at some point, one, the wines have to speak for themselves, and then
Right.
two, the relationship that you built then leads to, hey, what are your kids up to? I mean, you talk about, oh my God, our lives and our craziness and all these little things that happen. The stuff that we talk to, our friends about. And that is sort of how that develops. So no, I mean, I don't think it's possible to kind of see every little detail that's going to come from that, but I think it was certainly possible at the beginning to see that yes, I was not going to be spending my time driving around with wine distributors in other states. We
Yeah,
knew this was going to be all about, us leading people through our world and kind of
that's
showing
awesome
them
though.
what it is that we do. So from that perspective, a lot of the things, the little details, we were going to figure out as we went along, but I think the kind of main focus we had down very, very early on.
Well, let's talk about going into this new chapter that you guys did, going into the winemaking and running the winery and going into a small business. You've got a background in music. You've got a background in a tax attorney. You've lived in different places in the country. We talked about before we recorded in your background. So you've had different experiences. Do you think having all these experiences, every time you do something new in your life, you draw from the past and bring it to the future, what you want to bring in? So have those qualities from travel, and even traveling to taste wine in different countries, has all of that helped you today? Are you seeing your past help you now? The
Oh,
positive
absolutely.
stuff. Okay.
Absolutely. And the key is the experiences and the lessons that you draw from the experiences that you've had. When we started to get into the wine business, I was a lawyer for 10 years and you stop being a lawyer, and people look at you and say, "Oh, don't you feel like you threw away, your previous career?" No, I mean, those lessons that I learned in that business, I apply every single day. The fact is, a winery is a business and it needs to be run like a business. Now, I mean, I know that for some winery owners, this is a pet, fun vanity project for them, and they don't necessarily
Mhm.
care whether they make a living off of it. For us, this pays bills. So
Yeah.
this has to be done in a sustainable way, in an intelligent way, without it looking like that. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, we've got to be able to provide the experiences that are such that people don't even really think about that as much as other than just kind of being in that moment. So there definitely are challenges there. And, we certainly recognize that. But also, having been a musician, right? I mean, I was a French horn player for 20 years, and that's the reason why the theme of our winery is centered around music. The French horn is our logo. All of our 10 wines are named for specific pieces of music or a composer, something that captures what that wine feels like. I'm
Mm.
big, and when I'm talking about wine, I'm always talking about texture. I'm always talking about what you feel. I can't tell you what you taste. I can't tell you what you may smell. And I don't want to. I mean, those are connections.
Yeah, that's your discovery. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's going to be every individual's palate is different. Their experiences are going to be different. They bring all those things in with them. So I don't want to get in the way of those particular connections. But what I will do is talk about, my winemaking always comes down to making wines that work with your palate, not fighting your palate.
Mm. Right.
And that can be in a lot of different ways. But we those are things that we share with everybody that comes in, but it's that feeling that the music ties into so well. For lack of a better way to describe it, when I am tasting a wine, my brain hears it as much as
Mhm.
it tastes it,
Makes
right?
sense.
So it's that same idea of feeling is does
Dynamic.
exactly. You hear a
Yeah.
melody. Does the melody make sense? You don't need to you don't need to be a professional musician. You don't need to be a performer to when you hear a passage. Yeah, that makes sense. There's
Mm.
balance there. It's telling a story. And that's where the tie-in with the wine comes in so well, because we're essentially doing the same thing. Every wine is going to tell a story. And we can describe those in kind of musical in musical ways. I mean, obviously, we're not going to break down technical things, but that idea that it's just something that just will hit you, right,
It's
and
an
it will guide you.
atmosphere. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
it's a feeling. It is. So, do you have a playlist? for
We
the
do.
winery?
We do. We have on our website, we have a Spotify playlist, and every one of the pieces that we have, or composers that we have named a wine in honor of, is featured there. And that's very helpful for when people take the wines home, where you can actually do at home you could do a wine and music pairing.
See, that's
We're all.
fun.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're all taught to think of like wine and food, wine and food. And those things are nice, but of course, everybody will have their own idea of what fits the best there. If you really want to get behind and into the head of the person who's doing the crafting, I just think music is a much more direct way to accomplish that.
Mm. Do you listen to music when you're doing like tests and taste tests and all the behind the scenes, like even driving things around and getting out in the vineyard? Do you listen to music all the time?
Oh, all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
it's what makes my day go by. It's what helps me to absorb what is going on around me. It
Hmm.
sets a mood. It allows me to relax. I, I have anxiety issues, as I think a lot of people do, and this is just kind of one of the ways that just helps me to provide some
Mm,
balance, some zen, and
man,
just kind of
yeah.
more than anything, just kind of allows me to be receptive to what the grapes or the wines are trying to tell me.
See, to me, you should be blasting music out into the vineyard. Not blasting in a negative way, but just like the music to me, the growth of a vine looks like music to me. If you did it like a time lapse and you put it with music, you can see what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
It
there's a cycle. I mean, and that cycle, it is so, when you're doing this and you start to see the agricultural side of it, that cycle just replays every single year, although it is always different every year. And that's
yeah,
the one thing. Especially where we are in the Willamette Valley, no two growing seasons are the same.
yeah.
And they tell different stories every time, which is helpful in a lot of ways when folks come in, because it allows us to tell, not just the how I crafted it part from, taking 10% from barrel one, 5% from barrel two, so on and so forth. It's, well, a lot of those decisions I had to make because here were the weather patterns of that particular year. Sometimes we get years that are really hot. Sometimes we get years that are cooler, wetter, dry, all those
Hmm.
factors that just go into what you get when you harvest. And that because of that, it will always be a slightly different story. But what I want folks to be able to notice is that the consistency of the storytelling, right? I mean, you can
Absolutely.
always see what the intention is behind what we're trying to do.
It's the same as in music, right? You can learn from different musicians and emulate and even cover their music, but you still have to have your own signature sound, you know?
Absolutely.
So somebody knows, even if it's the same song, oh, that's so and so playing because
Yeah,
of that
absolutely.
specific sound.
and
It's the
and
same
it's
thing.
not and it's not a, especially for us, it's not just a cookie cutter sort of thing. I mean, one of the trends that we've seen in Oregon is that we've got sort of these, I guess, warehouses, for lack of a better word, where you've got one winemaker that makes wines for a lot of different people. A lot of smaller producers do not physically make their own wine. So you've got, somebody making wines, like I say, for 50, 60 people. And when you go
Wow.
to those wineries and you start to say, boy, these wines taste very, very similar to the last place I was at. And then you turn around. Now, they may all be really good, but is it really telling a story that is distinctive to that particular winery? Or is it
Mm,
just telling, the same story that you're getting in a place down the road? For better or worse, what you're getting in the glass is me. And
mm,
I don't make wine for anybody else. So, what we are able to do is tell, through my lenses, a very unique story that is going to be interpreted different by everybody. And that's okay.
Now, in closing, if you could have a tasting with three people from the past or the present or the future or fictional, I don't care, but you want to hang out with them and maybe learn from them, or see what they think about your wine. Who do you want?
Oh, goodness. One of the things that I think about is just sort of when I grew up, in the 80s and what our society was like then. I mean, it's never perfect, never perfect,
Oh, we had
versus what
fun
our
though.
society is now.
We had fun.
We had fun, and life did not feel, I mean, people had differences, of course, but it did not feel anywhere near as tooth and nail as it feels today. So from my perspective, the people that I would love to talk to are people that are uniters, people that can talk to a wide variety of folks, and kind of how do you establish those connections? So Martin Luther King would be on my list for that. Gandhi would be on my list for that. And the other person, and this might surprise folks, is Walt Disney.
Yeah,
Because the thing about Walt Disney, and and a lot has been written about Disney and what he was like and personal. And yes, I mean, I get that there are definite downsides to Walt Disney on a personal level. But what that man
everybody. Yeah.
accomplished was to be able to connect in a way that was so unique to billions of people in this world on a level that has not been seen before, and I doubt will be seen since. And I would love to get a sense of his thought, creativity, and thought process behind that. I think that would
Yeah.
just be absolutely fascinating.
Is the creativity. I mean, he really dreamed. He's like, go for your dreams,
He
He really
did. And
was.
then the other thing about Disney that I admire so much is he hired amazing people. When you look at how that enterprise developed, and I'm talking about before the days when it was a publicly traded company, way
Mm.
back when the Imagineers had so much of the power in the design and the implementation of things in the parks and the movies. He knew how to find and treat and retain great people, which is an amazing skill. It's a skill that
It's
I wish
huge.
more people had.
Hmm.
Because so often I think you have a business or you own something and you think you gotta do everything. You've got to have your hands in everything, rather than just say, hey, I recognize talent. I can hire that talent, and then I can let that talent do what I hired the talent to do and go do something else that's a better use of my time and my skill set.
It's huge. I know people in business where they stepped aside because they were just they it was time for them. They hadn't grown like they owned the company and they weren't growing as they should because and this is an interesting world. I mean, people can be in their 80s and open a business, which I think is great, right? But
Absolutely.
there's people who didn't progress with the times. Our industry sucked in regards to people not jumping on the bandwagon. I mean, we come from print and back in the day of old school typewriting. I mean, like typesetting. I mean, we've gone from that to developing our own film to being digital to podcasting to all these things that changed. And how many newspapers didn't change?
Right.
How many newspapers refused to even have a website back in the day? I mean, we were doing a lot of this pre-Google, and it's like people look at us like, yeah, we are that old. But it's about that progression, and it's so important as companies, and no matter what, if you can hire or work with people that can help you progress as things change, and then even be ahead of the progression, which sometimes is really painful because you're doing the dirty work. You know what I
It,
mean? There's a
absolutely.
weird balance in that. In being the
Absolutely.
pioneer, pioneering is hard. You take the battles, and then somebody could come up and just take everything you've done and skate off of your back, right?
Yep.
But there's a thing in your soul that's important. But I love that because I just think hire who's going to be better and don't let yourself get in your own way. If you don't want to progress in something and you're progressing in a different area, that's okay.
Mhm.
I have a friend who her company, she said, you know what? My staff are better than me. I'm going to go do this over here. It's still my company. I still listen and all that, but she went and did something else, you know,
That's the way to
and
be.
her company rocks
Yeah.
and they're all happy
And
and they're
guarantee
all
you it's a place
uniters.
people like to work because they're empowered and people
Yes, good
recognize their
word.
skills. and they're allowed to do what they were hired to do. I
Yeah.
mean, whenever you hear about bad environments, it's always because people are being micromanaged. And it doesn't become
Toxic.
about, what is best for the development of our company. It is what is best for my personal ego or my pocketbook or whatever it is. I've always kind of found that if you do the right things, those issues will inevitably take care of themselves. I mean, there's a reason why Disney is now the empire that it is, right? And I don't think it's whatever Walt intended. But, in Walt's lifetime, he was plenty successful by following those strategies.
I agree. I agree. Well, it's been real fun chatting with you, Dave. Anytime, I know we'll be doing more shows, and you got to come on our happy hour parties because, we like a good happy hour, don't you? I mean,
Anytime.
happy hours,
I'm
happy
up.
hours. Everybody, remember bellsup.winery.com. Go check them out online and make that appointment when you go to Oregon and to Willamette Valley. But you also ship online.
We
People
do
can
ship.
order
Yep,
online.
we ship all over the country. There are only 2 states I can't ship directly to. That's Utah and Kentucky. But any other state we can ship to. Check us out. We have our list of our wines on the website, which you'll see. But also just reach out to us directly by email or by phone. One thing I'll say about our website is it's a little bit different. It is specifically designed not to do point and click ordering. For the exact same reason that we've talked about on the rest of it. We want this to be more personal. So email us, call us if you'd like to place an order, because we want to have a conversation with you. We want to get to know you and figure out, hey, what are going to be the best wines that we make that are going to be a match for what you like. And we don't want to sell you things that you're not going to want.
Because it's different too, isn't it? A lot of people that have come to you and then maybe they live outside the country and outside the state or region. It's not like you just start buying wine online and hoping, right? Or
that's certainly most of our business is what you've described. But we will get situations where in particular, one of the things that's happened is we've gotten because we have the theme, the music theme, we've gotten a lot of symphony musicians that may not have come to visit us, but because they love the theme so much, they've bought wine and tried it for the first time just by shipping it.
And gifts, because it's
a
good
absolutely.
theme. Yeah, it's like, hey, and Oregon Wine Month has got to be, isn't that May? Oregon Wine Month is in May. So everybody start planning now. Start planning. But every day is an Oregon Wine Day. You guys have awesome wine, and it's been a pleasure even being in Willamette Valley. We'll be back in your neck of the woods next year.
Excellent.
But not during your snow season. We're leaving at that point. So we'll see you. We will actually get to see you both.
We will look forward to hosting you.
We can't wait. We can't wait. Well, everyone, again, bellsupwinery.com. They're up in the Willamette Valley, very close to Portland. If you're flying into Portland, close to Seattle, even it's not that huge of a state. Well, it's big, but it's not, it's doable. If you go to Oregon, you must go there and report back. Thanks so much, Dave, and say hi to Sara for us.
Will do, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio Success Express Show. This show is brought to you by Big Blend Magazines. You can keep up with us at bigblendradio.com and check out our magazines at blendradioandtv.com.